perfect family, every lie begins with something that looks perfect, and Elena's life looked perfect in all the ways that mattered to people who only glanced. The house sat on a quiet suburban street where lawns were trimmed evenly and neighbors waved with practiced warmth. White paint, blue shutters, a porch swing that creaked softly in the evenings. From the outside, it was the kind of home that promised safety. Inside, it smelled of baked bread and lemon cleaner, and the walls were lined with framed photographs that told a carefully arranged story. Elena moved through her mornings with graceful efficiency. She woke before everyone else, tying her hair back as sunlight filtered through the kitchen window. Coffee brewed, lunchboxes were filled, notes were slipped into backpacks with little hearts drawn in the corner. When Michael came downstairs, she greeted him with a kiss that lingered just long enough to feel real. He smiled at her the way he always had, the way a man smiles when he believes he has chosen well. "You're up early again," he said one morning, reaching for his mug. She shrugged lightly. "I like the quiet. It feels like the day belongs to me for a moment." Michael laughed, unaware of the weight behind her words. He had no reason to look deeper. To him, Elena was steady, warm, unshakable. She was the woman who remembered birthdays, who organized neighborhood potlucks, who volunteered at the school without being asked. Other mothers admired her calm. Other fathers trusted her kindness. In a town that valued appearances, Elena fit perfectly. Their daughter, Lily, was the first to bound into the kitchen most mornings. Hair tangled, eyes bright. Their son, Daniel, followed more slowly, thoughtful even at 10, asking questions about things other children ignored. Elena loved them fiercely, with a devotion that sometimes startled her. When she watched them eat breakfast, argue over cereal, laugh at private jokes, a tight ache formed in her chest. Love for her was never simple. It was always braided with fear. At the school gate, Elena stood with other parents, exchanging small talk. She listened more than she spoke, nodding at the right moments, smiling when expected. Someone mentioned how lucky she was. A good husband, beautiful children, a life people dreamed of. "Yes," she replied softly. "I'm very lucky." The word tasted strange on her tongue. Lucky implied chance. Elena knew how much of her life had been built on deliberate silence. In the afternoons, she baked for fundraisers and helped with homework at the dining table. Michael came home around 6, loosening his tie, his voice filling the house as he talked about work. Dinner was a ritual they protected. Phones away, candles lit on Fridays, laughter encouraged. If there were cracks in the foundation, they were carefully plastered over with routine. Sometimes, when Michael talked, Elena drifted. She watched his hands as he spoke, strong and familiar, and wondered how a man could hold so much truth in his palms without knowing it. Guilt was a quiet companion, sitting beside her at the table, following her from room to room. She had learned to live with it, the way one lives with a chronic ache that flares when least expected. At night, when the children were asleep, Elena and Michael lay side by side. The room was dark except for the glow of the alarm clock. Michael would reach for her, his touch gentle, trusting. She responded the way she had learned to respond, with care, with affection, with just enough distance to keep certain memories buried. "Are you okay?" he asked once, sensing her stillness. "I'm fine," she said quickly, turning to him. She pressed her forehead against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. The sound grounded her, reminded her of the present. When he kissed her hair and drifted to sleep, Elena remained awake. In the quiet, the past crept closer. She remembered a different room years ago, in a house she no longer visited. The smell was different then, the light harsher. She remembered how quickly trust could be twisted, how words could become weapons when spoken by the wrong person. She remembered running, packing a bag with shaking hands, leaving behind everything she knew because staying felt impossible. Those memories never announced themselves. They slipped in uninvited, triggered by nothing more than a sound, a phrase, a look. Elena had become an expert at pushing them away. She built her life brick by brick on top of them, hoping the weight of happiness would keep the past sealed beneath. Michael stirred beside her. She tensed, then relaxed when he turned away. In the darkness, she whispered an apology he could not hear. "I'm sorry," she breathed. The words meant for a man who trusted her completely, and for a child who deserved a truth she could not yet give. Days became weeks, weeks became years. The town watched Elena's children grow. The photographs on the walls multiplied. Birthday candles were blown out. Christmas mornings were loud and joyful. On the surface, nothing ever changed. But perfection is fragile. It depends on everyone believing the same story. One evening, as Elena stood alone in the kitchen washing dishes, she caught her reflection in the window. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked composed, confident, whole. Only Elena knew how much effort it took to hold that image together. Michael came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You know," he said casually, "I don't say this enough, but I'm really happy. With us. With this life." Her throat tightened. She leaned back into him, closing her eyes. "Me too." It was true and it was not. She was happy. She was also terrified of how easily happiness could shatter if the wrong truth found its way into the light. That night, after everyone was asleep, Elena walked through the house, turning off lights, checking doors. She paused outside Daniel's room, watching him sleep. His face was peaceful, unaware of the invisible thread connecting him to a past that haunted her. "I tried," she whispered, unsure who she was speaking to. "I really tried to make it right." She returned to her bed, slipping under the covers beside her husband. As Michael reached for her in his sleep, Elena stared at the ceiling, heart heavy but steady. She told herself what she had told herself for years. The past was over. The family was real. The lie was contained. For now, she believed that if she loved hard enough, if she showed up every day and did everything right, the truth would soften with time. Maybe silence could become mercy. Maybe protection could be mistaken for honesty. These thoughts circled her mind as sleep finally claimed her, not as a dramatic fear, but as a steady resolve. Tomorrow she would wake early again, pack lunches, smile at the gate, and live the life she had built. Not because it was false, but because it was precious, and she would guard it with everything she had. Love was her promise, secrecy her burden, endurance her strength. Knock politely or wait for permission. Sometimes it arrives folded inside an ordinary envelope and lands on your kitchen counter like it has every right to be there. The morning the letter came, Elena was humming softly as she wiped the counter. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that followed the school run and preceded the long stretch of afternoon chores. Sunlight spilled across the tiles. The mail lay in a small pile near the door, mostly flyers and bills. She sorted through them without much thought until her fingers brushed against an envelope that felt wrong. It was plain. No logo. No return address. Her name was typed, not handwritten, the letters neat and impersonal. A small chill moved through her, subtle but unmistakable. She told herself it was nothing. A mistake. Junk mail dressed up to look important. Still, she didn't open it right away. She carried it to the table, set it down carefully, and poured herself a glass of water she didn't drink. For a long moment, she just stared at the envelope as if it might open itself. When she finally tore it open, the sound seemed too loud in the quiet room. The paper inside was heavier than expected. Clinical. Official. Her eyes scanned the page once, then again, slower this time. The words blurred, then sharpened with cruel clarity. A hospital record. A birth certificate. Not the one she had memorized over the years, but another one. An older one. A version of her life that was never supposed to surface again. Her breath caught in her chest. The name printed at the top was hers, but altered slightly, the way it had been years ago before she changed it. Beneath it was a hospital listed 3 states away, a place she had not spoken of since she fled it. And there, in stark black ink, was a date that did not align with the story she had told Michael or anyone else. Elena's hands began to shake. "No," she whispered, though there was no one to hear her. "No, no, no." She pressed the paper flat against the table, as if smoothing it could erase the truth printed on it. Her heart pounded so loudly she wondered if the neighbors could hear it. Every sound outside, the distant bark of a dog, the hum of a passing car, felt intrusive, threatening. She read the document again, searching desperately for an error, a typo, someone else's information, but the details were too precise, too accurate. The date, the hospital ward, the signature of a doctor whose name still lived in the darkest corner of her memory. How did they find her? The question echoed in her mind, sharp and panicked. She had been careful. She had moved away, changed her name, built a new life brick by brick. She had believed that distance and time were enough. Apparently, she was wrong. The sound of the front door opening snapped her out of her daze. Elena jumped, nearly knocking the chair over as she stood. She folded the paper quickly, her movements clumsy with fear, and shoved it back into the envelope just as Michael walked in. "Forgot my phone," he said casually, tossing his keys onto the counter. He stopped when he saw her face. "Hey, are you okay?" She forced a smile that felt like it might crack her jaw. "Fine, just tired." Michael frowned slightly, his gaze flicking to the envelope still clutched in her hand. "What's that?" "Nothing," she said too quickly. She corrected herself, lowering her voice. "Just junk mail." He stepped closer, studying her. "You look pale." "I didn't sleep well," she said, turning away before he could read anything else on her face. "I'll be fine." Michael hesitated, then nodded. He grabbed his phone and leaned in to kiss her cheek. "Try to rest today." "I will," she replied. The moment the door closed behind him, Elena sagged against the counter, her knees weak. She waited until she was sure he was gone before she pulled the document out again. Her eyes burned as she read the words she had hoped never to see. Memories surged, uninvited and relentless. The sterile smell of the hospital, the fluorescent lights, the nurse who avoided her eyes, the weight of fear pressing down on her chest as she signed forms she barely understood. She remembered holding her stomach in the mirror back then, whispering promises to herself, that she would survive, that she would protect her child, that no one would ever use that moment against her again. And now, somehow, it had found her. Elena folded the paper carefully, her hands steadier now, guided by years of practiced control. Panic would not help. Panic never helped. She needed to think. She carried the envelope to the sink, lit a match with trembling fingers, and held the paper over the flame. The edges curled, blackened, then caught fire. Smoke rose quickly, acrid and thick. She dropped the burning paper into the sink and turned on the water, watching as the ashes dissolved and disappeared down the drain. When it was over, she stood there, staring at the empty sink, her reflection warped by droplets of water. "It's gone," she said aloud. "It's gone." But the relief she expected never came. All afternoon, she moved through the house like a ghost. She scrubbed surfaces that were already clean, rearranged drawers that didn't need organizing. Her mind replayed every possible way the letter could have reached her. A record search, clerical error, someone who knew more than they should. By the time the children came home, she had mastered her face again. She smiled, listened to their stories, nodded at the right moments. But the laughter felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. At dinner, Michael talked about a new project at work. Daniel asked questions. Lily complained about homework. Elena participated just enough to seem present, though her thoughts were elsewhere, circling the same dark question. What else could surface? Later that night, as she loaded the dishwasher, Michael leaned against the counter, watching her. "You sure you're okay?" he asked gently. "You've been quiet today." She met his eyes, seeing only concern there, and something in her chest twisted painfully. "Just one of those days," she said. Nothing to worry about. He reached out, squeezing her hand. If you say so. Elena nodded, grateful and terrified all at once. When the house finally fell silent and Michael slept beside her, she lay awake, staring into the dark. Burning the letter hadn't erased what it represented. The past had found a crack and it had slipped through. Somewhere out there, someone knew, and secrets, once stirred, rarely stay buried for long. Itself with certainty. It begins as a feeling, a quiet disturbance that refuses to settle. For Michael, it started as a weight he could not name, a sense that something in his life was slightly misaligned. He noticed it in small moments. Elena pausing too long before answering simple questions. The way her smile sometimes arrived a second late, like it had to travel a distance before reaching her face. He told himself he was imagining things. Marriage, after all, was built on trust, and Elena had never given him a reason not to trust her. Still, the feeling lingered. One evening, Michael sat in the living room flipping through an old photo album while Elena bathed the kids. The album was one she rarely touched, filled mostly with pictures from the early years of their marriage. As he turned the pages, something struck him. There were plenty of photos of Elena as an adult, but very few from her childhood. A couple of school pictures. One faded snapshot with a woman Elena said was her mother. No birthdays, no holidays, no extended family gatherings. He frowned, closing the album just as Elena walked in. "You ready for tea?" she asked lightly. "Yeah," he said, then hesitated. "Hey, can I ask you something?" She stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Of course." He gestured toward the album. "You don't have many pictures from when you were younger. Did you lose some?" Elena's smile was practiced, smooth. "We moved around a lot. Things got lost." "Oh," Michael nodded. The answer made sense. It always did. Still, something about the way she turned away too quickly lodged itself in his mind. The feeling grew over the next few days. Not suspicion exactly, but awareness. Michael found himself replaying conversations, noticing inconsistencies he had once brushed aside. The way Elena avoided talking about her past in detail. The way her mother deflected questions whenever they visited, steering conversations toward safe, neutral topics. It wasn't that Elena lied often. It was that she avoided certain truths with remarkable skill. One Saturday afternoon, Michael helped Daniel with a school project on genetics. Charts and diagrams were spread across the table, colorful strands of DNA twisting across the pages. "So I get half from you and half from Mom?" Daniel asked. "That's right," Michael said. "That's how it works." Daniel studied him thoughtfully. "Why do I look more like Mom than you?" Michael chuckled. "That happens sometimes. Genetics are funny like that." Elena, standing in the doorway with a basket of laundry, froze. Michael noticed. She recovered quickly, stepping forward with a smile. "You look like both of us," she said, ruffling Daniel's hair. "Just in different ways." But Michael couldn't unsee the tension that had flashed across her face. That night, after the children were asleep, Michael lay awake beside Elena. He listened to her breathing, steady and controlled. He wondered how long she'd been pretending to sleep. "You ever think about where we came from?" he asked quietly. Elena's breathing faltered for just a moment. "What do you mean?" "Our families, our histories, the things that make us who we are." She rolled onto her side, facing him in the dark. "Why are you asking this now?" "No reason," he said quickly. "Just thinking." She studied his face, though he could barely see her eyes. "I don't like living in the past," she said. "I worked hard to get where I am." "I know," Michael replied, "and I admire that." The conversation ended there, but the unease remained. A week later, Michael attended a work lunch where coworkers chatted about ancestry tests they had taken. Stories were exchanged about unexpected relatives and genetic surprises. Michael listened with mild interest until someone laughed and said, "It's crazy how much you can learn from a little saliva." That sentence stayed with him. At home that evening, Michael watched Elena as she moved around the kitchen. She looked tired, more guarded than usual. He wondered if she felt the same invisible pressure he did. The sense that something unspoken hovered between them. An idea formed in his mind, innocent on the surface, dangerous beneath. After dinner, while the kids watched television, Michael cleared his throat. "Hey, I was thinking of something fun we could do as a family." Elena glanced up. "Fun? Yeah, those ancestry DNA kits. Everyone at work is doing them. Thought it might be cool for the kids, help them learn about genetics." The room seemed to go quiet. Elena's hand tightened around the dish towel. For a split second, her face went pale. Michael noticed everything. "That sounds interesting," she said slowly. Daniel perked up. "Do we get to see where we're from?" "Exactly," Michael said, watching Elena carefully. "Just for fun." Elena forced a laugh. "Sure. Why not?" Her agreement came too easily, too carefully placed. That night, Elena didn't sleep. Michael knew because neither did he. They lay inches apart, both staring into the darkness, both carrying thoughts they would not voice. In the days that followed, the kits arrived in the mail. Small, unassuming boxes that felt far heavier than their size suggested. Elena handled hers with a careful detachment, as if it might bite her if she touched it too firmly. "You okay?" Michael asked casually. "Of course," she said. "It's silly to be nervous about something like this." But she was nervous. Michael could feel it in the air. They completed the tests together at the kitchen table, the children giggling as they followed instructions. Elena smiled for them, encouraging, supportive, everything a mother should be. Only Michael saw the way her hands trembled when she sealed the sample. When it was done, Elena excused herself to the bathroom. Michael watched her go, his chest tight. This was supposed to be harmless. A game. A learning experience. Yet as he dropped the packages into the mailbox later that afternoon, Michael felt like he had set something irreversible in motion. That night, Elena stood alone at the bedroom window, watching the streetlights glow. She wrapped her arms around herself, breathing slowly. The past was awake now, and it was listening. It didn't come with drama. No ominous music. No warning. It slid quietly into Michael's inbox on a Tuesday afternoon while he sat at his desk, half listening to a meeting he'd attended 100 times before. DNA results available. For a moment, he ignored it. He told himself he'd open it later, at home, with Elena and the kids. It was meant to be a family thing. A curiosity. Something light. But the unease he'd been carrying for weeks tightened in his chest, sharp and insistent. He clicked. The report loaded slowly, each second stretching longer than the last. Charts appeared. Percentages. Names. His eyes scanned automatically at first, detached, until they landed on Lily's results. Match, parent-child. He exhaled without realizing he'd been holding his breath. Then he scrolled. Daniel. The word no match stared back at him, clean and clinical. Michael blinked. Once. Twice. "That's not possible," he murmured. He refreshed the page. Same result. His pulse thundered in his ears as he leaned closer to the screen, reading every line with growing disbelief. The data was precise, unforgiving. According to the results, he was not Daniel's biological father. The room felt suddenly too small. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor, drawing curious looks from coworkers. He muttered an excuse and left the office, stepping outside into the cool air. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone, opening the report again as if repetition might change it. Didn't. Then he saw something else. A secondary match. Close familial relation on the maternal side. The implication hit him slowly, cruelly. Whoever Daniel's biological father was, he was related to Elena. Michael's stomach churned. A brother? A cousin? The possibilities spiraled, each worse than the last. His mind raced through memories, conversations, holidays, faces he'd met and forgotten. None of it made sense. By the time he got home, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the living room. Elena was in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove. She looked up when she heard the door. "You're home early," she said. Michael didn't answer right away. He set his bag down carefully, as if sudden movements might shatter him. He watched Elena for a long moment, seeing her not as the woman he loved, but as someone he suddenly did not fully know. "Elena," he said quietly. She turned, sensing the shift in his tone. "What's wrong?" He pulled the printed DNA report from his jacket pocket. His hands trembled as he held it out. "I got the results," he said. The color drained from her face. She didn't ask what they said. She didn't pretend surprise. She simply stared at the paper as if it were something alive. Michael swallowed hard. "Lily is mine," he continued, voice breaking. "But Daniel, Elena, the test says he's not my son." Silence fell between them, thick and suffocating. "Elena," he said again, louder now, "explain this to me." Her knees buckled. She reached for the counter, gripping it tightly as if to keep herself upright. Tears welled in her eyes before she spoke. "I never meant for you to find out like this," she whispered. Michael's heart cracked open at the sound of her voice. "Find out what?" She shook her head, sobbing now. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry isn't an answer," he said, though there was no anger in his voice, only pain. "Who is he? Who is Daniel's father?" Elena slid down until she was sitting on the kitchen floor, arms wrapped around herself. Her words came in broken pieces between gasps for breath. "Before I met you, something happened. Someone I trusted. Someone from my family." Michael stared at her. "What are you saying?" "He hurt me," she said, her voice barely audible. "I didn't understand it at first. I didn't know how to say no. By the time I did, it was too late. The world seemed to tilt." "You were assaulted?" Michael asked slowly. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I was young. I was scared. When I found out I was pregnant, I ran. I changed my name. I tried to disappear." Michael sank into the chair across from her, his strength leaving him all at once. "Daniel," he whispered. "I didn't know at first," she said quickly, desperation flooding her voice. "I thought maybe the timing was wrong. I prayed you were his father. I prayed every day." "Why didn't you tell me?" Michael asked. His voice was raw now. Elena looked up at him, eyes red and swollen. "Because you saved me," she said. "You gave me a life I didn't think I deserved. I was afraid if you knew, you'd see me as broken. I was afraid you'd leave." Michael covered his face with his hands. The house was quiet, too quiet. The children were upstairs, laughing at something on television, unaware that their world had just shifted. "I never lied because I didn't love you," Elena continued. "I lied because I loved you too much to risk losing you." Michael stood slowly and walked toward her. He knelt in front of her, unsure of what he would do until he did it. He pulled her into his arms as she collapsed against him, sobbing. "I don't know what to feel," he said into her hair. "I don't know how to process this." "I know," she whispered. "I know." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the middle of a kitchen that no longer felt ordinary. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Michael stood in Daniel's doorway, watching him breathe. The boy he had raised, the boy who called him Dad, the boy who shared his laugh, his habits, his heart. Blood suddenly felt like the least important thing in the world. Michael returned to the bedroom where Elena sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. "I'm not leaving," he said quietly. She looked up, shocked. "What?" "I need time," he continued. "I need to understand this. But Daniel is my son. Nothing changes that." Elena broke down again, this time from relief. The truth had come at a terrible cost, but it had also lifted a weight she had carried alone for years. For the first time, there was nothing left to hide. Michael lay beside her that night, both of them awake, both of them changed. The family was not perfect anymore. It was real, and in the quiet, painful honesty of that moment, something stronger than secrecy began to take its place.